Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the Reparenting podcast. I'm Jane Underwood, and I'll be your guide to reparenting yourselves so that you can develop into the responsible and resilient adults that you aspire to be. Hello, and welcome to our very first podcast episode entitled Personal Growth for Perfectionists, Overcoming Perfectionism Through Reparenting. I'm your host, Jane, a recovering perfectionist and former high achiever, and in this episode, we will explore the concept of overcoming perfectionism through reparenting and share practical tools for personal growth. But before we dive into that, let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like you're constantly striving for flawlessness, setting exceedingly high standards for yourself, and being overly critical of your own performance? If so, you're not alone. In this episode, I'll share my own journey with overcoming perfectionism and provide insights into what perfectionism is, how it affects our lives, and how it develops. And most importantly, I'll give you practical reparenting tools you can use to overcome it. Reparenting, in case you are unfamiliar, can be defined as taking an active role in your personal development and learning how to act as a good enough parent to your own inner child. To truly understand the concept of perfectionism, let me share a bit about my own journey with it. I recently had to confront my perfectionist tendencies while creating this very first episode of the podcast. Although I have been working on reparenting myself for the past 10 years, I must admit that my work is still not over. For many years now, I have wanted to produce inspiring, genuine, educational media for others, similar to my role models like Mr. Rogers and Carl Sagan. So when it came time to create this first episode, the stakes I had set for myself were quite high. I wanted to produce something of high quality, but I struggled to decide on which topic to start with. I considered a few topics, but none of them seemed just right. I found myself constantly revising and never truly satisfied with what I was able to write, and then I started procrastinating. Eventually, I realized the real issue. My perfectionism was getting in the way, and my goal for the first episode was too high. My desire to do everything perfectly was hindering my progress, and I had to remind myself of an important mantra. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So, what exactly is perfectionism? In psychology, and according to the Canadian Psychological Association, perfectionism is a multi-dimensional personality style that is associated with a number of psychological, interpersonal, and achievement-related difficulties. They say that it is not a disorder, but a vulnerability factor that produces problems for children, teens, and adults. It is often confused with achievement striving or conscientiousness. However, it is a maladaptive pattern of behaviors that can result in a large number of problems. By contrast, achievement striving and conscientiousness are attitudes that involve appropriate and tangible expectations, often very difficult but attainable goals, and they produce a sense of satisfaction and rewards. While perfectionism involves inappropriate levels of expectations and intangible goals, that is, perfection, and a constant lack of satisfaction, irrespective of performance. No success is ever good enough, and the perfectionist always craves more. Another definition of perfectionism states that it is characterized by striving for flawlessness and setting exceedingly high standards for performance, accompanied by tendencies for overly critical evaluations, as defined in the book Performance Psychology by Emma Mosley and Sylvain Laborde. It can manifest in various ways, such as constantly seeking approval, fear of failure, and fear of embarrassment. To truly understand its impact, let's take a journey inside the mind of a perfectionist. Imagine constantly tugging at your shirt as you check yourself in the mirror for any imperfections. Are your shoes clean? Is the mirror spotless? You notice a tiny pimple or hair that stands out, and you can't rest until it's dealt with. The constant need for flawlessness and high standards extends far beyond physical appearance. There's the ever-growing to-do list, the dust in the corner of the room, the dirty dishes in the sink. It's a never-ending cycle that leaves no room for rest or relaxation. The fear of failure is a constant companion, always lurking in the back of your mind. Procrastination is an old friend because it feels safer not to try at all than to face the possibility of failure, which reinforces your deepest fear that you are indeed inadequate. You fear being rejected by others if your flaws, weaknesses, and failings were made apparent. Deep down, there's a belief that if people saw you at your worst, they would judge you, laugh at you, and reject you. The need for perfection is not just a desire, it's a necessity to avoid being abandoned and denied love, acceptance, and belonging. That's why failure is not an option, and since trying leads to failure, you think it's probably better not to bother trying at all. As this glimpse demonstrates, perfectionism can take a toll on our mental health. Also, according to a clinical case report in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, perfectionism can result in chronic tendencies for emotional distress and interpersonal conflict. Therefore, it is important to recognize these patterns and understand the negative impact that they can have on our well-being. How it affects us. While perfectionism might appear, on the surface, to be a positive trait that drives us to achieve great things, there is actually way more evidence showing it is counterproductive. Perfectionism is a chronic source of stress, often leaving people feeling like failures even when others see them as successful. Perfectionistic individuals require themselves to be perfect. As the glimpse into the perfectionist mind from earlier showed, perfectionism can be exhausting. Similarly, perfectionists may struggle to accept anything less than perfection, which can cause them to avoid taking risks, fear failure, procrastinate, and be overly critical of themselves and even others. Worst of all, the relentless pursuit of flawlessness can have serious consequences, including low self-worth, depression, anxiety disorders, high stress in the face of failure, and even suicidality, as pointed out in the Washington Post article titled, "Perfectionists Lowering Your Standards Can Improve Your Mental Health." Regardless of the level of success achieved, maladaptive perfectionism can contribute to unhappiness. Unfortunately, certain aspects of our society, like social media, still promote perfectionism by perpetuating flawless portrayals in posts, often rewarding high achievers for their pursuit of perfection despite its harmful effects on mental health. Now, let's explore how perfectionism develops and the factors that contribute to its formation. One consequence of a tricky childhood is that it can cause a person to become a perfectionist or develop perfectionistic tendencies. At its core, the pursuit of perfectionism is driven by our fundamental needs for belonging, self-worth, love, and acceptance. We learn to associate perfection with being lovable, internalizing the belief that our worth is tied to our external achievements and flawlessness. Flaws and failures are not easily tolerated as they threaten our access to achieving this sense of love and acceptance, which are necessary for us to feel secure and well. Therefore, perfectionism can be seen as a way of striving towards these needs. By setting impossibly high standards for ourselves, we may believe that we will be more successful, gain more recognition, and ultimately feel more accepted and loved by others. However, this pursuit of perfectionism can often be self-defeating, leading to feelings of inadequacy and anxiety rather than a sense of achievement and fulfillment, as stated earlier. Perfectionism can develop in childhood due to several reasons, including high parental expectations, an overemphasis on achievement, and a lack of emphasis on effort. When parents struggle to accept themselves as lovable beyond external merit, such as productive output and accomplishments, they may project this pressure onto their children. In order to fulfill their fundamental need for love and acceptance, children strive to meet their parents' high standards, hoping to finally earn their love. Consequently, children who grow up with overly critical parents will often internalize these expectations and develop unrealistic standards for themselves. That is, self-criticism. Additionally, children who grow up in high-achieving environments, such as those with high academic pressure, may develop perfectionistic tendencies to meet these high expectations. And as I stated earlier, social media can put more pressure on us to appear flawless, which can make matters worse, especially for children and teens. So, if perfectionism is not a healthy or sustainable way of achieving our goals, what can we do to overcome it? Now that we understand what perfectionism is, how it affects our lives, and how it develops, let's dive into some practical steps to overcome it through reparenting. What are some practical steps that we can take to overcome our perfectionism? How can we fight back against the mean critical voice within? how can we reduce the power and control that perfectionism has over our lives. Overcoming perfectionism is a difficult journey. Actually, I found numerous research articles mentioning problems associated with treating perfectionists, either for the perfectionism itself or related disorders. Treatment aims to explore personal views of self and others, viewing perfectionism as a form of maladaptive coping. When clients understand the role of perfectionism, they can discontinue striving to meet their extreme goals and unrealistic standards. Here are 6 strategies that have helped me in my own reparenting journey, which I hope will assist you in overcoming the negative impact of perfectionism in your life. 1. Challenge your core beliefs about perfectionism. 2. Challenge your fear of failure. 3. Give yourself permission to make mistakes. 4. Transform your inner critic with role models of kindness and more compassionate self-talk. 5. Allow yourself the chance to face some possibly hard truths and grieve. 6. Celebrate small victories and embrace a growth mindset. Strategy number 1. Challenge your core beliefs about perfectionism. To conquer your inner perfectionist, it is essential to challenge the core beliefs that revolve around perfection and achievement. In this strategy, we will explore some key beliefs and shift our perspective towards a healthier mindset. The first belief to challenge is the notion that our self-worth and lovability hinge on our accomplishments. Let me emphasize this. Your self-worth and lovability do not depend on your achievements. It is crucial to recognize that people can love and accept you exactly as you are. Just like parents love their babies despite their limited achievements and multitude of mistakes, you too are worthy of love and acceptance. Actually, reflecting on how parents cherish their babies despite the simple tasks of filling diapers, crying, and making countless mistakes as they navigate their way through learning human behavior, can profoundly impact our beliefs about self-worth. Consider the profound truth that if babies are lovable and deserving of acceptance simply by existing, then the same applies to you and me. Embracing this understanding can help shift our thinking and realize our inherent lovability and worthiness. Fred Rogers' song, "It's You I Like," beautifully supports this idea. During his last commencement address to the graduate students of Dartmouth College, he shared the lyrics of this song, emphasizing the intrinsic worth and lovability of every individual, irrespective of their external success or appearance. Recognizing that you don't need to do anything sensational for people to love you is liberating. Moreover, let's acknowledge that perfection is an unattainable ideal. Even if it were possible, which it is not, it is far healthier to cultivate the courage to pursue our goals despite the possibility of falling short. Effort and perseverance in the face of difficulties truly matter. Accepting that perfection is impossible frees us to make mistakes, try things for the sake of trying things while learning and having fun along the way, and not feel thoroughly crushed and ashamed when we don't succeed. I must confess that challenging my own beliefs on this topic was an arduous process, one that I initially resisted. It is no easy task, and I am fortunate to have had the guidance and support of patient mental health professionals who helped me challenge my unhelpful perfectionist perspectives and beliefs. My hope is that you can confront and challenge these beliefs before perfectionism exacts a toll on your well-being. By doing so, you can transform your perspective and approach toward perfectionism, which is genuinely half the battle. Remember, you have the power to redefine your beliefs and liberate yourself from the suffocating grip of perfectionism. Embrace the truth that your worthiness is inherent, independent of your achievements. Challenge the myth of perfection and cultivate the courage to pursue growth and learning rather than perfection itself. Strategy number 2. Challenge your fear of failure. Let's discuss the next strategy for overcoming perfectionism. Challenging your fear of failure. Interestingly, I've learned that procrastination often stems from the fear of failure. We've probably all experienced that hesitation, avoiding tasks because we're afraid of falling short. Take, for instance, an artist who hesitates to publish their work, worrying that it won't be deemed perfect. But what if I told you that failure isn't always the end of the world? It's understandable to fear failure when we tie our self-worth and lovability to success and perfection. However, as we discussed earlier, this belief isn't actually true. In reality, our fear of failure is often based on unrealistic expectations, holding us back from taking necessary risks and just trying things out. To challenge your fear of failure, here's a strategy that I suggest you try. When faced with the fear of failure, ask yourself, what is the worst thing that could realistically happen? This question helps put your fear into perspective, identifying the specific risks associated with taking action. Once you've identified these realistic potential risks, ask yourself a follow-up question. If that did happen, what could I do in response? Having a plan in place can make you feel more prepared and less overwhelmed by the possibility of failure. Remember, failure is a natural part of life that offers opportunities for growth and learning. So instead of being paralyzed by your fear of failure, forgive yourself for succumbing to it. It's a very human mistake to make. And as the old saying goes, "Pobody's nerfect." The only real failure is not trying or failing to learn from the experience. As Wayne Gretzky and Michael Scott like to say, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Even if you fail in your attempts, it's not the end of the world, so there's no need to dwell in self-pity. Use each opportunity as a chance to practice getting back on track and trying again. Let me share an example from my own life. Recently, I failed a test required for a job interview. While I felt disappointed, I didn't berate myself for it. Instead, I congratulated myself for taking the leap, reflected on the lessons I could learn, and prepared myself to continue my job search with renewed determination. Don't let the fear of failure hold you back. Challenge it, explore the worst possible outcomes, and use those insights to motivate yourself towards success. Remember, failure is a valuable opportunity for growth and learning. Strategy number 3. Give yourself permission to make mistakes. To truly overcome perfectionism and build resilience in the face of adversity, it's important to embrace the idea of making mistakes. That's why I like to give myself permission to make mistakes, or as I call it, making friends with the F word, failure. Allowing ourselves to make mistakes grants us the freedom to explore new paths, take risks, and learn from our errors when they inevitably occur. If we didn't learn this skill in childhood, we can now use reparenting to teach it to ourselves as adults. A good enough parent helps their child understand that it's okay to mess up and make mistakes. By practicing this strategy, we can become more comfortable with the idea of making mistakes and develop a growth mindset. One effective way to do this is by intentionally attempting low-risk challenges where failure is highly likely but the consequences are otherwise safe. For instance, we can try cracking an egg one-handed with our non-dominant hand, writing our name with a deliberate spelling mistake, tackling a difficult tongue twister, or even wearing mismatched socks. While these challenges may seem trivial, they serve a purpose in helping us become more at ease with making mistakes. Through them, we discover that mistakes can be corrected, some can even be funny, and it's perfectly okay to laugh at our own blunders. Personally, I tried the egg challenge, attempting to crack it one-handed with my non-dominant hand, and it was quite the challenge, as I couldn't even manage it with my dominant hand. I was concerned about making a mess, so I prepared by placing a bowl under the egg and using an easy-to-clean surface. But you know what? It was a bit awkward, but it turned out to be fun, and I surprised myself. It wasn't as bad as I imagined, and it taught me that I'm sometimes more capable than I give myself credit for. Granting ourselves permission to make mistakes has positive impacts on various aspects of our lives, including personal relationships, career growth, and creative pursuits. It opens us up to vulnerability, makes us more willing to take risks and try new things, and ultimately leads to deeper connections with others, enhanced creativity, and innovation. Interestingly, some of the greatest inventions were born out of mistakes. Take, for instance, both the Post-it note and the Slinky. Practicing making mistakes is a crucial aspect of learning and growth. By doing so, we learn that mistakes can be corrected and that it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, it's how we learn best, since learning and development happen when we are just outside our comfort zone. To encapsulate the significance of making mistakes, here's a quote I absolutely love from the book The World According to Mr. Rogers. A young apprentice applied to a master carpenter for a job. The older man asked him, "Do you know your trade?" "Yes, sir," the young man replied proudly. "Have you ever made a mistake?" the older man inquired. "No, sir," the young man answered, feeling certain he would get the job. "Then there's no way I'm going to hire you," said the master carpenter, "because when you make one, you won't know how to fix it." In summary, granting ourselves permission to make mistakes and becoming comfortable with failure is vital in overcoming perfectionism. The more we practice making mistakes and expose ourselves to failure in safe environments, the more comfortable we become with taking risks and trying new things in all aspects of our lives. Remember, failure is an integral part of the learning process, so go forth and make mistakes. As an additional dare, I invite you to watch a YouTube video about the girl who never made a mistake. It's an inspiring story that beautifully illustrates the importance of making mistakes in our lives. I'll put a link to it in the transcript. Strategy number 4. Transform your inner critic with role models of kindness and compassionate self-talk. Are you ready to transform your perfectionist inner critic into a more compassionate and kind friend? The fourth powerful reparenting strategy that has helped me overcome my perfectionism is growing my compassionate self-talk and learning to speak more kindly to myself. First, it's important to understand that you are not to blame for developing a harsh inner critic or any unhelpful strategies to meet your need for love and acceptance. While everyone's path is unique, let me share what has helped me the most in making progress in this area. For me, this involved a combination of learning about psychology and child development, years of self-study and psychotherapy, and finding helpful resources like books and reputable online sources. I hope my experience can inspire you to start exploring your own mix of good role models, resources, and practices to develop your own kinder inner voice. 2 practices which have surprisingly helped me show myself more kindness and grow healthier self-talk are reparenting puppetry and finding role models of kindness in the arts and media world, as well as in therapy. Reparenting puppetry is a tool that I stumbled upon by accident, but has since become an integral part of my journey. By giving my inner child a physical form using a plush teddy bear, I was able to interact more directly with my inner child and practice growing my kindness and self-compassion through the art of puppetry. This has been much easier than trying to speak kindly to my adult self, as it's harder to speak meanly to an innocent and sweet little child, or in this case, a soft teddy bear. I'll talk more about the origins and the practice in another episode. The second practice that has helped me is finding empathetic, kind voices in arts and media. This has allowed me to internalize those voices and replace the mean, judgmental ones. One interesting tidbit from psychology is that our inner voice is actually formed by the external voices we were surrounded by as we developed our sense of self. Generally, our caregivers, teachers, family members. One role model that has been instrumental in my journey of internalizing a kinder voice and reparenting myself is Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. His songs, I Like You As You Are, and Sometimes People Are Good, have been tremendously helpful in promoting ideas that challenge unhelpful beliefs that often plague a perfectionist mind. These songs resonated with me on a very deep level, and I hope to offer you, dear listener, a similar supportive, kind, and accepting voice that you can also grow to internalize, if you wish. It's essential to remember that nobody is perfect, and it's okay to have flaws and make mistakes. As they say in the unicorn store, the most adult thing you can do is failing in what you really care about. By recognizing our inherent worth and treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, we can overcome the negative self-talk and self-criticism that often accompany perfectionism. So, I hope that you can grow your own mix of good role models, resources, and practices to help you transform your inner critic. Whether it's reparenting puppetry, kind voices in the arts and media world, or something else entirely, know that you're not alone in your journey towards healthier self-talk and a kinder inner voice. Strategy number 5. Allow yourself the chance to face some possibly hard truths and grieve. Overcoming perfectionism or any aspect of our personality can be challenging, and this step may be one of the most difficult. In order to do the work, we often must come face to face with some difficult truths, not only about who we are, but also about our beginnings, including our formative years, childhood, and the caregivers or role models who shaped us. It can be hard, but also very liberating to be able to face the events and people who helped shape our current behaviors and characteristics, and then grieve what we missed. A childhood where we were free to be kids and make mistakes, caregivers who could love and accept us unconditionally, flaws and all, even when we fail, and environments that praised effort, perseverance, and learning over success. Look, I know from first-hand experience that it isn't easy to accept that a core part of your personality may be harmful, and even more so when it is a characteristic that has brought you a sense of pride for years. You may have won medals and awards, gotten excellent grades, and even have a shelf showcasing your high achievements. Now you are learning that your perfectionist tendencies may actually be a flaw? Well, we can't have that now, can we? It may also be difficult to accept that our caregivers, who may still be perfect in our eyes, partly due to our perfectionist all-or-nothing thinking, could have messed us up to some degree with the high expectations and pressures they placed on us growing up. You are allowed to grieve the fact that you had to work extra hard to meet expectations that were unrealistically high to gain access to something fundamental that some children are given without condition: love. If you choose to deny that any mistakes were made and hold on firmly to your perfectionism, in the end, you will be missing out on a chance to grow. And you can't say, I didn't warn you. Strategy number 6. Embrace a growth mindset, celebrate effort, and small victories. Adopting a growth mindset and celebrating effort and small steps toward progress are crucial when it comes to overcoming perfectionism. This is an important attitude that good enough caregivers, teachers, and coaches strive to impart to their children and students. As we reparent ourselves, we can learn to cultivate this same attitude in our own lives. To begin, it's essential to understand that we don't need to demand perfection from ourselves in order to accomplish wonderful things. We can still strive for excellence while allowing ourselves to make mistakes and staying focused on learning and progress. I call this adopting a growth mindset. A growth mindset helps us build confidence and resilience because we accept that growth may happen slowly and it doesn't always follow a neat trajectory. Bit by bit and step by step, we can make progress and learn from our mistakes. We don't need to be perfect at the start or at any stage to get good at something. It is through effort, trying and failing, and trying again that we can grow from a beginner to an intermediate to a master. To embrace a growth mindset, it's also important to acknowledge progress and celebrate small victories along the way instead of solely focusing on the end result. Reflect on your daily accomplishments, no matter how small they may seem, and congratulate yourself for them. This will depend on your goals and your current level, but here are a few examples of how to do this. If you're aiming to be more active, putting on your exercise clothes or rolling out your mat could be a baby step. Similarly, if you want to eat healthier, finding a healthy recipe or buying vegetables at the grocery store could be a small victory. If your goal is to walk 7,000 steps a day, taking a 15-minute walk during your lunch break could be a small victory. Also, reject the urge to compare yourself to others when judging your performance. Instead, it's better to measure your progress by comparing yourself to your own benchmarks and focus on beating your own personal best. While comparing yourself to your previous performances can be helpful, it's important to also consider external factors that may have affected your present outcome, such as sleep deprivation, injury, or distraction. One quote that helps me remember to only compare myself to myself is this: "I'm proud of you for the times you came in second or third or fourth, but what you did was the best you had ever done." By Fred Rogers. Similarly, we can get better at setting more realistic goals for ourselves, focusing on what really matters, and defining what a good enough result looks like. To do this, it's helpful to figure out what is most essential to complete the task at hand. Let's say the 20% that does 80%, and set goals accordingly. Set realistic goals that are achievable and not too high. This is especially important when it comes to setting goals regarding our use of time, because perfectionists can easily edit and revise projects for days, forgetting about time entirely. In summary, adopting a growth mindset and celebrating your progress along the way is key to overcoming perfectionism. Remember to celebrate your small victories, only compare yourself to your personal best, and set realistic goals to achieve your desired outcomes. Rather than striving for perfection, aim for good and good enough, and strive for your own personal best. This will make you much happier in the long run. In conclusion, overcoming perfectionism is a journey that requires self-compassion, self-acceptance, and a commitment to personal growth. By challenging our beliefs, giving ourselves permission to make mistakes, practicing self-kindness, allowing ourselves to grieve, and focusing on progress rather than perfection, we can break free from the shackles of perfectionism and find fulfillment in our lives. Remember, you are not alone in this journey, and it's okay to seek support and guidance along the way. Embrace your journey, embrace growth, and let go of the need for perfection. I hope you found this episode on overcoming perfectionism insightful. Your feedback is incredibly valuable to me as I strive to improve and provide informative content. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and let us know. If you have any questions or suggestions, please email us at reparentingpodcast@gmail.com. Finally, please note that I am not perfect, and I still fail more than I would like to admit at applying the strategies featured in this episode to overcome my own perfectionism. but I can still be kind and compassionate towards myself and forgive myself for my failings. Always remember, you are worthy and deserving of love and acceptance just as you are. Celebrate your efforts and small victories along the way. Thank you for listening to our first podcast episode. The end.